best since taking over the reins from his famous father, has done nothing but train winners. Plenty of them, and some big races to boot. Up and over the last safely by 2 lengths still. Hoover there in second place. They race to the line. Navajo Pass is holding on.
It's Pedlar's Cross who kicks a length or so here ahead of Rev de Similar. Cross is the leader, and Pedlar's Cross is storming up the hill to win for Jason Maguire and Donald McCain. The final flight, Cinders and Ashes hit it hard, so good in Montbazon, then comes Typhonium who responds, but it's Cinders and Ashes wins the Supreme Dominacy. Ballard Briggs, Oscar Time got to it, but he can't get past Ballard Briggs. Donald McCain follows in his father's footsteps, and Donald McCain brings his first chance this Grand National winner.
So many happy memories already, and hopefully plenty of time to create a good bucket load more. Donald McCain, got you at last.
Morning.
Good to see you.
It took a while.
And you've been down here in Sandown the last couple of days with runners. Are we going to be seeing a bit more of you down south, do you think?
We've always run horses wherever. I was saying before, Perth's still our furthest away track. Fontwell, Plumpton, we have runners there all the time. Had winners at Sandown and stuff last year. Make no mistakes, it's more competitive down here on certain days, so if you can earn possibly better prize money elsewhere, then we go elsewhere. But no, we'll come. If we've got them, we'll come.
I said 155 winners last season. That represented the culmination of... I mean, is it fair to call it a comeback?
Well, so people have said. I was hoping it hadn't gone away, to be honest, but listen, it was just a great year, and I still don't quite know how it happened. We gathered up a nice team of horses, and they were just healthy all year, and they kept winning. And when I got to 100, I was thrilled, and the rest I was just shaking my head, to be honest.
But if you're churning out winners at over 20%, 23%, as you are this season with 71, and I know it's from fewer runners, but you've got to be doing something right. Can you identify what's changed over the last 2 or 3 seasons?
Look, I put a new gallop in 3 or 4 years ago, probably 4 years ago now, at great expense. But we trained a lot of winners on my old gallop and so on. Surrounded myself with good people. I've got a fantastic bunch of owners, and a lot of staff who've been with me for a long time now, and you can't do that without them, and we've got a great team of people that I'm probably needed less and less on a daily basis, and we do it between us, and we get stuck in, and it's just being comfortable with what you're doing and where you are, and the people around you.
Because that was something I was going to say. You actually look down the list of how many winners you've trained each season, and the sort of narrative is Donald McCain drops off cliff and then comes roaring back again. But in fact, you never got down to fewer than 50 winners, so you were still productive, even if they were lean years by your very high standards. You just set yourself a very, very high bar.
And in those days had more horses than I have now, and don't ever want to have those numbers again. But I mean, I remember going back when we were doing it with Dad, and he used to stand up at the Christmas party and say it'd be great to get 10 winners by Christmas. So I can still think back to that, if you know what I mean. It's just, look, I always thought if you can train 100 winners in a season, it's been a great season, and I'll stick with that. So,
what's your earliest horse racing memory? What is the earliest thing you can remember about the sport? Because you were 2 when Red Rum won his first Grand National. I mean, that's asking an awful lot, but something in that heady period of the early 70s must stick in your mind.
First obvious memory is Red winning his 3rd National, and
the 3rd one,
and sitting, we were never allowed to go, so I was at my grandmother's. We went to one, myself and my sister went to one grandmother each, and I remember watching it on the sofa at Grandma Harris's house in Southport, and then looking out my bedroom window as he came home in the evening, and obviously my bedroom was above the showroom at the front, so there's a veranda, and over the road the shops, and there was people on the roofs, there was people, the whole street was shut, and yeah, that'd be my earliest racing memory.
And How come you weren't allowed to go? Was it just not considered a thing for young kids to go?
Well, in those days, it was seen and not heard and kept out of the way, firstly, but obviously it was superstition as well, and Dad had this routine, Mum and Dad had this routine. They went to a certain owner's place in the morning, had a few drinks, had a bit of a do, and went in his car to Aintree, and that was the routine. And it was so... Can you imagine how consuming it was? This one horse, this one great horse that was the public horse, and kids came second.
I was fortunate enough to interview your dad many times, both while he still had the licence and after you'd taken over with you on his own, and everyone was familiar with his views, his sometimes outspoken views towards the end of his career and his life. But I don't really know much about what your young family life was like in those days in Southport when Red Rum was doing his thing. What was family life like then for all of you?
Well, in those days it was, if you were kids, you were sat in the car having a packet of crisps and a bottle of pop outside the pub, weren't you? When they were social, and every Sunday was owners round and a big social thing and that sort of stuff. And it, the business came first. Red Rum was the most, make no mistakes, he was the most important thing in our family. Way more so than us, if you know what I mean. And rightly so. I know he was very, very special, and everything we have, truthfully, as a family, is down to him.
Was he selling the horses and the cars at the same time, effectively?
Well, the cars was different. Dad had someone in that, Paul, who still has the showroom now, to be honest, and he still has that, and he made a very good job of that. But Dad just used to interfere with that a bit as the racing went on. He'd go off buying cars when he wasn't supposed to and that sort of thing. But but the horses, it was literally the kitchen window and the horses were there, you know. So you couldn't avoid it. It was everything. And
your mum, an incredibly kind of strong and vibrant character as well. Were they big social people?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Dad especially, yeah, very much so. To a fault, probably. To a fault. But that was the way it was then. Yeah.
But it was sort of, I can feel that style.
Yeah, I say he and I tried, to be honest, being on the other end of it as a youngster, when my kids came along, I tried to keep a bit of time for them on a Sunday and that sort of thing, because it was the way it was then. There was no time for family life. It was owners coming round all the time. It was open house, you know.
So did you see yourself sort of developing as a personality in a very different way to him because of that?
I think when you stood back and saw Dad, and he didn't care, he said what he thought. A lot of it was tongue in cheek, and he wasn't worried about what people thought about it afterwards. When it's your father and you remember the family and you see people talking about him and that sort of stuff, then it bothers you more, if you know what I mean. He didn't care, but from standing off and seeing it, you would be more, please Dad, don't say this and don't do that. But he did it for devilment, to be honest.
Was it inevitable that you would be the next name on a licence, that the training enterprise would grow, would burgeon, and that you would take over? Was it always in the planning?
It was never really discussed. It's a very easy thing to do, to fall into it, isn't it? You know, I always wanted to ride for a bit and go away. Yeah, I was always gonna work in the job and probably take over. I suppose there was a chance I could have gone off somewhere else and whatever, but yeah, it was never really discussed. There was never any great master plan. The only time there was ever a discussion was when I was going to get my first job. I was going to go to Michael Dickinson, I think it was, and he was going off elsewhere, and he suggested that we wrote to 4 people. That was Guy Harwood, Michael Stout, Luca Kamani and Henry Cecil to go, which we did. And I ended up at Luca's, and that was the only real planning in any part of it, you know. So other than that, it's just snowballed, really.
Did you get replies from all of them?
All but one.
I think we're safe now. I think that
Henry Cecil, the only one that didn't reply.
Henry Cecil didn't reply.
Michael Stout, I spent a couple of summers with him as well, actually, and Sir Michael and Guy Howard replied, and I think Luca rang up, actually, and had a good chat, so that's where I ended up.
So he wanted you. You turned up at Luca's. Did you learn or not?
Absolutely, you can't help but not doing. But you're learning about a place that I still, when I turn up at Newmarket now, as you drive into town, it's mind-boggling. You know, so you just see all the facilities and everything's done for you, and all the beautiful yards and so on and so on. And it still blows me away every time I'm at the sales. I go up and stand on the heath and that sort of stuff. But obviously, there's another side to training centres, and you've got to weigh up what you're comfortable with and what. I mean, Dad would never be a man for a training centre. It just wouldn't have worked, would it? Complying with other people.
He'd have taken a view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a great place to visit. Would you want to train there? No. You know, but yeah, you learn to be around great horses. When I was there, you know, he had a yard full of stars at the time, and it's fascinating seeing the different abilities for an animal with 4 legs, a head and a tail. Mm-hmm. The different abilities in some of these great horses was something to be seen, you know.
And did you get to ride a lot of the good ones?
No. Rode a few of the lead horses and that sort of stuff. I used to look after a very good 2-year-old who was nearly favourite for the Derby most of the winter, but that never worked out. But, you know, they had the work riders and the senior work riders and that sort of stuff. But it was a great experience, it was, yes.
What sort of school was it? What sort of ship did Luca captain?
Look, I still find him quite intimidating now to talk to, and he's been quite good to me. But it's just I was young. I was only probably hadn't quite turned 16 when I went there, and it was a very, very professional yard. He checked. People couldn't believe it, but he checked every horse every evening. And if you looked after the last horse in the yard, you wouldn't be leaving till nearly 7 o'clock at night. And that was his way. He didn't go racing an awful lot and so on. And but you know, surrounded by beautiful horses, yeah.
But he was a hard taskmaster.
Hard but fair. Yeah, you know, he wanted the job done properly. Yeah.
So what did you do after that?
Then I wanted to ride, rightly or wrongly. People say wrongly. I wanted to ride, and I was riding then, and I enjoyed it. So I went to Oliver Sherwood's. And I was 2.5 years with Luca, 2.5 years with Oliver Sherwood, and during the summers then I went to Michael Stout's.
And Oliver Sherwood again was at the top of the tree at the time. At the time you were there, wasn't he?
Yeah, had some great horses around the place. It was just after the Wester Wake, but it was
cruising altitude horses,
cruising
like that.
altitude and large action and all those sort of horses. And he'd go and win 2 divisions of the novice chase at Kempton on a Saturday and that sort of stuff. And yeah, no, it was the best yard in Lambourne at the time, yeah. And
we saw it last week. Yeah, he was sitting in your seat last week, and you know, the response we got to him appearing on the programme was tremendous. He was a very popular man. Did the yard have that kind of convivial feel about it then? Was it very different from being in a flat yard in Newmarket?
I think jumping yards are always different to flat yards. Yeah, very
just
different.
Just in feel?
Yeah, a very different atmosphere. He had good jockeys. Mark Richards was second jockey. Simon was there first, Jamie Osborne came, and there was conditionals in the yard and good lads, and Lambourne's a slightly more switched off version of Newmarket, isn't it? But the yard was flying. You know, it was a great place to be around proper good jumpers.
And good fun for you. Good years.
Good fun, yeah. Bit of hardship as a trainer's son as well, but yeah, good fun.
Did you?
Yeah. You used to get. I was only a little lad at the time. Used to get picked on a bit and that sort of thing, but that's fine. That's part and parcel of the way it works.
Did you think it was fine at the time, or was it? Or did you have to?
It was hard.
Did you have to get a thick skin?
Yeah, I had to get a thick skin. It was hard on occasions, but look, that's you know, it doesn't do you any harm.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you finally made the decision that you needed to kick on and go home, did you feel you came back better equipped? And knowing a bit more?
Absolutely, yeah. It came down to the fact Dad was losing one of his yards in Southport. We had the main yard with 22 boxes, and there was a yard down the road, I think turned into a brothel after that or something, where there used to be an old riding school, and he was losing that yard, so he either stayed there with 22 horses or he moved somewhere else. And also it was getting quite difficult on the beach with the environmentalists and so on, that if you went there now, it was unrecognisable to the beach we used to train horses on. It's almost marshland out to the sea, because they tried to bring the sandhills out, and that, you know, where we used to work horses just isn't there anymore. So he'd done his national service and before his national service he'd been around the Cheshire area, and someone told him this yard was, well, it was a dairy farm at the time. They were trying to diversify and so on, so he decided to move there, and it was at that point he said to myself and Joanne, basically, can you come home and give us a hand? Because it was all, for them more than us, they'd never left Southport, the pair of them. So.
And Joanne's your sister?
Yes.
Who's worked very closely with you for a long time?
Yes.
Yeah, and you guys obviously get on well.
Yeah, Joanne's great. Obviously, Joanne's been away. She was secretary to Nicky Henderson, Jenny Pittman for a period of time. She worked for Shippy Ellis, the jockey's agent in Newmarket, for the time as well. And when it was time to move, we all came home and mucked in.
When did that turning point come from? What was quite a small operation, really. And as you said, your father would stand up and say, if you could get 10 winners by Christmas, we'd be happy, to really developing this into a bit of a powerhouse.
One of the simplest things that we did when we went there, you went to this place, there was 4 stables down by the office, it was an old dairy farm. We'll never own the place, and Dad's invested a lot of money in it, but there was a cattle grid at the top of the drive, no hedges, no fences, no gallops, just fields. And the first gallop we put in was about 3.5 furlongs up the hill, and it stopped by the tree. We extended it about 200 yards to the road, and the difference it made in the way the horses were running was, if we'd known it was going to make that difference to start with, I'd have done it with a shovel myself. Just that extra half a furlong
really?
Or so made such a difference to the way the horses worked. Yeah. And they
can you understand how that's happened? How that worked?
Yeah. Because just as you got to the top of the hill, you'd be pulling up, and whereas when it was extended, you could go that extra couple of 100 yards. So they come over the brow of the hill, take a blow, and you could make them work for another couple of 100 yards. And obviously at the time we didn't realise what a difference it would make, but it made a huge difference. And the horses, I remember walking around the yard when we were first there, and I think there was 30 horses in the yard, and I think 17 and a half of them were Dad's. So that's where we were. Yeah,
I mean, you can't really operate an efficient business like that at all, even though, economies of scale, your staffing costs are going to be much less and so forth. But it's a big place, isn't it? And it suits a good number of horses. Did you have ambitions to train a lot of horses then? What were your ambitions then?
I didn't really know what training a lot of horses was. We'd always had a number of horses, maybe 30, 35 at the most. So would you like to be a 60, 70 horse yard? Yeah, absolutely you would, yes. Beyond that, I didn't expect to be going beyond that.
Yeah, because you always wear it quite lightly to me. I never look at you and think you're sort of, burning with this enormous ambition to train hundreds of winners and be, right at the top of the tree. But clearly there is a fire in you, otherwise you wouldn't have got to where you've got to.
I want to train winners. I want to train good winners. I don't really ever expect to be at the top of the tree. I don't really, I believe, have the mentality. It's not hunger, because we always want to train winners, and when you're not training winners, I'm in as bad a mood as anyone, but I'm maybe not cutthroat enough to get to the very top. My horses are my joy, and if a horse has done me well, I'm not going to then ship him on and get another one in. And I don't have the owners to do that either. My owners invest in the horses, and they expect the horse to be there a long time, hopefully, and not be able to, you win your 2 novice hurdles, 3 novice hurdles, and you get a rating. Maybe not be a good horse, ship him out and get another one. That's not where we are. I just want to be surrounded by nice horses and nice owners, and hopefully keep training them winners.
Yes, because you're not really one for great sort of displays of bravura, are you? That's just not it's not your style, is it?
No.
And so is there still quite a bit of the the quiet, shy, small young boy in there, do you think?
I think, yeah, probably more than people think. I'm not particularly sociable in many ways. Shall tell you that.
Sean's quite sociable.
She's very sociable. Yeah. I can see owners love it. It works, and it's just that I just struggle with it, and I always have done. I don't know if that comes from the way I've been brought up or whatever. I just sooner keep myself to myself a little bit.
Do you think that's why, when things weren't going quite so well, say 5-6 years ago, you thought of walking away?
Look, I got a good kick in. I did, and well, I don't know if walking away ever came into it, because the first thing I did is I sat down and spoke to my owners and things like that, and I realised very quickly how lucky I was, you know. So, but as an individual, you're a bit scarred by that sort of thing further down the line, the way it happened and that sort of stuff.
Because, I mean, people have pretty short memories in this game. Effectively, your yard mushroomed and mushroomed and mushroomed, and a huge portion of those horses were owned by one ownership concern, the Paul and Claire Rooney.
Yeah.
And those horses effectively all moved en bloc.
Yeah.
And they were being managed by your ex-stable jockey. So there were all sorts of multi-layered, complex personal issues there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the 12 months before it was horrendous. Horrendous. In fact, I didn't realise, I probably shouldn't even bring this up, but I didn't realise I was diagnosed with depression at the time, till the other day when a firearms officer rang me to renew my father's gun licence, because I keep his guns for him. I don't shoot, I keep his guns for him. And she said it was on my records. I didn't even know, to be honest. So I know I was getting a bit of help off the doctor and things like that, but it was a pretty low point, yeah. But I can't tell you that it was literally from the day the horses went, it was like a new job again. And that sounds silly, really, but from the day the horses went, it was like a new job again. I went and stood at the top of the gallop and give myself a shake, and we were away again.
I do have quite a vivid memory, and I was wondering whether I should bring this up, but I will. I remember coming to see you to do a feature, and it was around about the time when the horses weren't running great, and you had a list of all the horses that were owned by the Rooneys pinned up on the thing, which people normally would, and you said to me, look at that, and pointed to the list, and obviously it ran to, you know, 3 pages long or whatever, 100 and whatever horses, and your eyes widened and just went, look at that, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And you had that feeling of, and I thought, I was kind of worried, because I thought you seemed quite helpless.
It was never comfortable. It really wasn't. Look, they supported me, and I shouldn't be complaining, but it was never a comfortable situation. And it snowballed quite dramatically, and I found it very hard to say no when they were giving you a chance to buy the horse that you wanted to train, and I bought some very good horses, thankfully, but allowed to buy the horse you wanted to train, and then, as everybody will tell you, I like buying horses. It's become a bit of a standing joke.
You can't go to a sale and walk away without one.
They also wanted the other ones. Well, when you've bought the most expensive one, you can't really say no. You can't have the cheaper ones, and that's kind of how it happened. And it's very, very difficult to say no. It really is. And in hindsight, could I or should I have said no? Probably, yeah. But that's a long way down the road now.
Yeah. But then we are where we are, which is you doing incredibly well again and performing to a very, very high level, sitting fourth in the Trainers' Championship behind some people who are incredibly competitive and really do believe that
I don't expect to stay there, no.
They should be. Well,
top 10 will be happy.
You're going to stay there, whether you like it or not. I mean, this is the fundamental difference between you and pretty much everyone else who sits on this sofa. Because I think people in this sport condition themselves to thinking they have to say, yeah, I'm going to be here, I'm going to, you know, and give it all out to the owners. How nice is it for you to be in a position where you can be yourself and the owners will still come? Well,
it's not my way. I see a lot of these trainers self-promoting and that sort of stuff, and you know, if it takes that type of person to push to get them to come to you, that's not really me.
No.
You know, so, you know, I've got some wonderful owners. Trevor Hemmings only ever came into the yard once, and we had to win a Grand National for that to happen. You know, obviously Tim barely ever comes, and
Tim Leslie,
and that's probably the one main reason why I'm still going is Tim Leslie and his family. They've been fantastic to me, you know. And he says it's nice to have a trainer that's so boring I don't have to socialise with him. You know, so that's the type of people I train for, and it's great. And they've been ever so good to me, and I appreciate everything they do.
And clearly to you, and you've mentioned it already, your family life is very important to you, and you've got your daughters are both back home working.
Yes.
In the yard.
Yeah.
I mean, and the experience that they've accrued must be invaluable now, isn't it?
It's
Very
great.
Good riders as well.
It's great, and I have a fantastic assistant, Adrian Lane, who's been with me a long time, and I've got the girls there, and say a number of people have been there for a long time, and obviously Shan's there. There's nobody you'd sooner have backing you up, to be honest, you know, and it's great. And the one thing all of this over time made you realise is at the end of the day, your family's the be all and end all. It's all you've got at the end of the day. You know, friends will come and go along the way, and your family are there to back you up. And
just thinking back to your father, it was also very obvious that he was incredibly proud for all the bluster, wasn't he?
I think so. Yeah, it was never that was never discussed either, to be honest. I think towards the end we got a great crack out of going to the sales together and being able to buy horses together and the type of horse you wanted to train and that sort of stuff. And I didn't realise at the time when we won the national, I didn't just appreciate how soon he'd be gone, to be honest. And to me, that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was one of those people that I think the sport imagined would just be there forever. And me, yeah. And still, to be honest, you still walk in the house sometimes and expecting to be sat on the sofa growling at you reading the Racing Post, yeah. It doesn't. He was this all-consuming presence that probably to a fault took over everything. And even as you're getting older, you were always too concerned about what Dad thought. But now your decision-making processes aren't always scrutinised and questioned by
definitely not
by somebody.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Does that make your job easier now?
Yes, and also as we discussed with the other stuff, I now feel more confident having survived what we survived. Mm-hmm. If you can survive that and keep going and do what you're doing, then you know we're going to be okay. I was never a confident person, but in a twisted way, it's been the best thing ever happened to me.
Donald McCain, for the moment, thank you very much.
Subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel now to watch more great races like this.